The house had never sounded so quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet that comes after a long day, but the kind that presses against the ears, the kind that feels like something is waiting just beyond the walls. The millionaire stepped inside without announcing himself, his shoes still polished from the morning meeting he had cut short. His driver hadn't even had time to ask why. Something had tugged at him halfway through the day, a strange unease that refused to be ignored, as if the walls of his own home were calling him back before sunset. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and for a moment he stood still listening. The marble floor reflected the fading light, and the tall windows cast long shadows across the hallway. This house was always immaculate, always quiet, always controlled. It was designed to impress, to intimidate, to remind anyone who entered that success lived here. But tonight it felt different, fragile, almost. He took a step forward, then another, and that was when he heard it, a whisper, not from far away but close, close enough to make him freeze. "Please, be quiet, don't say a word." He turned, surprised, and saw the maid standing near the staircase. Her eyes were wide, her finger pressed gently against her lips. She was usually composed, respectful, always moving with quiet efficiency. Now she looked frightened, as if one sound, too many, might shatter something unseen. "What's going on?" he whispered back instinctively, though confusion rippled through him. "Why are you—" She shook her head urgently, stepping closer. "Please," she mouthed, her voice barely a breath. "Not now, just—" Listen, he had employed her for years. She had never once spoken to him like this, never interrupted, never asked for silence. And yet, something in her expression stopped him from pushing further. He followed her gaze down the hallway toward the living room. At first, he heard nothing. Then, faintly, a sound drifted through the air. A soft, uneven breathing, the kind that didn't belong to someone sleeping peacefully, but to someone trying very hard not to cry. The millionaire's chest tightened. He took another step, slowly, and saw a small figure curled up on the sofa. A child, no more than 10, maybe 11, knees pulled to the chest, arms wrapped around them like a shield. The child's shoulders trembled with each silent sob. His heart stuttered. He turned back to the maid, his voice barely above a breath. "Who is that?" Her eyes glistened. "My daughter." The words landed heavier than expected. He looked again at the child, really looked this time. Thin wrists, shoes by the couch, worn and scuffed, a backpack on the floor, zipper broken, a school notebook peeking out. The pages were crumpled, edges torn. "What happened?" he whispered. The maid swallowed hard. "She came home from school early. She didn't want to come here, but I had nowhere else to take her today." He noticed how tightly her hands were clasped, as if she were holding herself together by force alone. "Why is she crying?" The maid hesitated, then spoke so softly he almost missed it. "Because today she learned something she shouldn't have had to learn yet." Silence stretched between them, heavy and aching. He felt a strange pressure in his chest, the kind he usually ignored. Business meetings, contracts, profits, those were things he understood. This was different. This was raw. He took a cautious step toward the couch. The maid tensed instantly, shaking her head again. "Please," she whispered. "She doesn't know you're here. If she hears—" He nodded and stopped, lowering himself into a chair nearby instead. The distance felt like miles. Another shaky breath came from the child, followed by a muffled sniff. "Mama?" the girl whispered. The maid turned instantly, moving toward her, but stopped herself, glancing back as if asking permission without words. He nodded. She knelt beside the couch, brushing a hand through the child's hair. "I'm here, my love." The girl buried her face into her mother's side. "I tried to be brave," she said softly. "I really did. I know," the maid whispered, her voice breaking. "I know you did." He had never felt like an intruder in his own home before. Yet now he wished he could disappear, give them privacy. But something held him there. Something told him this moment mattered more than any meeting he had ever attended. "What happened at school?" the maid asked gently. The girl hesitated. Then, in a trembling voice, she said, "They laughed again. They said my shoes looked like they came from the trash, and when I told the teacher, she said I should ignore them. But they don't stop, Mama. They never stop." The maid closed her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek, landing silently on the floor. The millionaire's jaw tightened. He had funded schools, donated to charities, shaken hands with principals and officials. Yet here, in his own living room, a child was breaking under something no donation had ever touched. "I didn't want to come here today," the girl continued. "I didn't want them to see me cry, but I didn't know where else to go." The maid hugged her tightly, rocking her back and forth. "You did nothing wrong," she whispered. "Nothing at all." The man felt something shift inside him. A memory stirred, something he hadn't thought about in decades. A school hallway, laughter that wasn't kind, a lunch tray knocked to the floor. Back then, he had learned to fight. Back with ambition, with walls of money and success. But no one had ever held him like this. No one had told him it wasn't his fault. He stood slowly, the floor barely creaking under his weight. The maid looked up, startled, fear flickering across her face again. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to intrude." She hesitated, then nodded. He looked at the child, still clinging to her mother. "You're safe here," he said gently. "No one here will hurt you." The girl peeked at him through tear-filled eyes. She had probably seen his face in magazines, on screens, always stern, always distant. Now she saw something else. Uncertainty, maybe even kindness. "Promise?" she whispered. He swallowed. "I promise." The word felt heavier than any contract he had ever signed. Silence settled again, but this time it was softer, the kind that heals instead of hurts. The maid helped her daughter lie down on the couch, tucking a throw blanket around her. The child's breathing slowly evened out, exhaustion pulling her towards sleep. When she was sure the girl was resting, the maid stood and turned to him. Her voice trembled. "I'm sorry. I know this isn't appropriate. I never meant to bring my problems into your home." He shook his head slowly. "This is your home too." Her eyes widened slightly. "You've worked here for years," he continued. "You've taken care of this place, of everyone in it. I think it's time someone took care of you too." She looked down, embarrassed. "I don't want charity." "This isn't charity," he said softly. "It's responsibility." They stood there, the air thick with unspoken truths. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the windows with gold. "Tell me," he said gently, "what else have you been carrying alone?" She hesitated, then spoke in a whisper that sounded like it had been waiting years to be heard. "I work 2 jobs, I barely sleep, I pretend everything. G is fine, because I don't want to lose this one. Her father left years ago. Some days I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending I'm strong." Her shoulders shook, and this time, she didn't stop the tears. Something inside him broke open, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to let something real in. He thought of the empty rooms upstairs, the expensive furniture no one ever sat on, the meals eaten alone. He thought of all the money he had made trying to fill a silence he never understood. "Stay," he said suddenly. She looked up, confused. "Stay for dinner," he clarified. "Both of you." She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. "I'll have the kitchen prepare something simple," he added. "Nothing fancy." A faint smile touched her lips for the first time that evening. "Thank you." As she returned to her daughter's side, he walked toward the kitchen, his mind racing. This wasn't charity. This wasn't obligation. This felt like something else entirely, something he couldn't yet name. From the living room, he heard a small voice murmur, "Mama?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Is he mad?" The maid glanced toward the kitchen, then back at her daughter. "No," she said softly. I think he's listening." And for the first time in a very long time, that was true. The evening unfolded slowly, carefully, like a fragile story afraid of being rushed. Plates were set, Soup steamed gently. The girl sat quietly at the table, glancing up now and then, unsure if she truly belonged there. He watched her from across the room, noticing how she straightened her back, how she whispered, "Thank you," as if the words cost something precious. He found himself smiling without realizing it. This was not how his day was supposed to go. But as he watched the maid gently tuck a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear, he felt a strange certainty settle in his chest. So, doors close loudly. Others open so quietly, you only notice when warmth begins to fill the room. And somewhere between the clink of a spoon and the soft hum of the house settling for the night, a life that had been built on numbers and noise began, without warning, to learn the language of kindness. He leaned back in his chair, listening to their quiet conversation, unaware that this moment, this unexpected return home, this whispered request for silence, had already begun to change everything. Even though the true weight of it had yet to reveal itself, and the night was still young, holding secrets that had not yet found the courage to speak.